I need to be believable that I'm bringing something that can only happen at that moment with those people in that space.
Depends on how you understand the word performance.
Most of my work, it's about me.
Well, my work is mostly documenting my personal things that I go through.
I would define performance art as a series of actions that are combined to express a particular idea.
I look at how persona develops as a reaction to how we process information and represent it.
Doing performance, it gave me a kind of bravery or courage to go into uncomfortable spaces.
It's not necessarily theater, it's not necessarily acting.
For me, performance art, it's a ritual.
It really transforms a feeling or a mood or an idea, or conveys the best way possible to an audience, rather than painting or sculpture, which I feel often limited to do.
So I'm interested in that notion of the audience, performer interaction, and what are the limits.
When I make a performance, I want the audience or the viewer or the passerby to walk away with some kind of experience.
When I think about making work, it still very much comes from my feeling as being a Caribbean woman.
Something visceral, something magical, and some kind of awareness that wasn't there before.
You know, as a performance artist or someone who uses performance in their work, it's hard to justify why on earth you're doing this stuff. I mean, you know, it's great for the galleries and the museums and the art people to kind of have something to talk about to an extent, and I mean this in the best possible way. But ultimately, I think for a lot of everyday, you know, people, I would say, you know, the general public, it's very unclear what you're doing and why are you doing it. Are you just trying to provoke people? Are you just trying to, you know, do something weird? Or you just have a mental health issue? Or, you know, what's happening with you?
I like to utilize as many possible mediums as I can, but I've been solely focusing on specifically sound performance work. And I'm interested in the social constructs in relation to art history. So I'm interested in that notion of the audience, performer interaction, and what are the limits.
For a while now, I've been kind of looking at the development of persona and character within whatever boundaries might define or confine a community. I look at how persona develops as a reaction to how we process information and represent it through what we create and how we behave.
I would define performance art as a series of actions that are combined to express a particular idea. It's not necessarily theater, it's not necessarily acting, but I think that for me, performance art definitely does incorporate some of the principles of theater, of acting, but it's more of an abstraction.
I try to include things from daily life. And for me, it's something that it's real. For me, that's one of the most important parts. So it's not a theater thing. It's not a stage thing. But I might do the same performance again, as you would perform another ritual again.
My interest in performance is primarily theatrical. I'm interested in aspects of play and artifice. The representation of something. So for me, play is vital. And in a lot of projects that I've done, even though they are photographically based rather than video or live performance, I do, in a masquerade-like fashion, perform various characters. So maybe when I'm hesitant to call it performance, it's possibly because what I'm really more interested in is the document of a performance, what remains, what's left behind, and how we kind of learn to read and interpret that.
I also look at it as a visual art. It's really important to me when I'm creating performances, thinking about composition in the space that I'm working in, thinking about the forms, also thinking about the way that color and movement all kind of come together in order to create a visually pleasing experience as well.
and it's about connecting people to art, but more importantly, I'm interested in connecting people to just their imaginative selves, to their creative selves, which I think of as a sort of your most autonomous, self-determined piece of you. It's where you're really able to, be your own master.
I think it's important that I make work from my own experience, and for anybody, for any artist to make work from their own experience, no matter if that's a privileged, white experience, or if that's like an underprivileged person of color, or vice versa.
So I'm very interested in making art accessible, feel like something that people want and need to have in their lives, and not just something for fancy fine art people to experience.
In my performances, if my work ends up exactly how I see it in my mind, like a recording, then something hasn't worked. I need to be believable that I'm bringing something that can only happen at that moment with those people in that space, and that's something that can't really be predicted. So I can try and control things through the actions I set up to create sort of this idea that I'm interested in, something that I'm working through. But then it really requires those other parts as well.
But beyond that, I really have to push myself to make sure that the work formally is engaging. And so like all the ideas can be there, and the kind of cultural triggers can be there. But as an artist, I guess, I want to make sure that the work visually and formally is engaging, so that someone from anybody from any background can approach the work, and they may not get understand all the codes, the cultural codes, but something resonates in them.
I will try to be heard, but if someone is not open to it, I don't think that it will be able to have an impact. The interaction only happens on both sides. So, especially in performance art, I do believe the viewers also have that power, which they're usually not aware of, that shape the piece.
I think performance itself maybe is a power struggle of sorts. The performer and the audience kind of compete for a certain amount of control, the ability to influence on one hand, and then the ability to form opinion on the other.
And it could be as little thing as sighing or clapping or standing. It definitely changes the mood, because the body's presence in a room is just by breathing and being, and even the silence, it really shifts the whole mood.
What inspired me to use performance in my work? I think the need for another medium to express particular ideas that I'm trying to convey through my work. I use video, I use painting, drawing, sculpture, but sometimes there's just that other thing that I'm trying to say.
Basically, it was the lack of feeling that I could communicate what I needed to communicate through conventional media. So there's something that I needed to communicate that was, painting was not enough, video was not it. So it had to be a real action in real time.
So I found that once I started to see some performance art, I said to myself, this is something that I think that I can really use in the work. I started experimenting actually with video before I went into performance. And the video was, in a sense, a type of performance in front of the camera. And it was also kind of planned out, but also there was room for some interpretation and play as I did the recording. So when I started to do the performance pieces, I realized that it had impact. It had power, and it made an impact on the viewers. And also how I personally transformed and became the work when I started to do performance.
Doing performance, I kind of like stumbled upon it through reading, and I kind of like had to find my own way to it. And for me, it meant a way to process experiences. So that's pretty much what it's about. It's personal experiences that I try to translate and take out of myself, out of my body.
It's funny that like more and more I'm kind of labeled as a performance artist, but I consider myself more of an interdisciplinary or mixed media type of artist. What I have to say about performance art is that it's the most automatic, like the most easiest art form for me to grasp and to manipulate, to make something that I think would be most memorable.
As a performer, it can be pretty intimidating for a viewer, but once you can acknowledge them that this is a collective experience, they get really excited and they're happy to be in it. And hopefully they're interested in whatever that storyline you're telling them, but not a storyline in traditional terms, but a storyline as a mood or a feeling that just kind of takes them by surprise, and then they can be in that moment together with you.
It starts with my idea first, and then immediately bounces to the audience. Physically where they are located, as in reference to where I'm located, also what their ethnicity and nationality is, how much information they have about any topic.
I work across disciplines, so I'm really interested in performance because it allows me to insert my body right into the audience. As a performance artist, we have ultimate control over our relationship to the audience and also what their role and expectation is.
Well, most of my performances are actually done in front of a camera, so I'm always in control of how they end up looking for the viewer. I don't do much, let's say, improvised or performances in front of a viewer directly, but I do some.
Basic questions like what is the message? And the sensitivity to your audience. I think I risk, or I already am, quite self-indulgent. And in doing so, what does the audience have to gain? So these are the questions that have kind of slowed me down a bit.
Most of my work, it's about me. It's very self-centered. But I think a lot of people connect to it. It's about being a woman in a macho place.
What I found most impactful about this particular exploration of the Catwoman was how my personal situation was so ridiculously universal. Like, I am there in my little personal box, thinking that these love situations and this drama and this sort of heroic story breakdown, like where all the realities kind of come crashing down and you're in this space like, where am I? This isn't what I was taught by Cinderella. And it's interesting how this is a reality for the women next door, the girl down the street, the lady you meet at dinner that's here from Canada. It's amazing how universal a personal context can be. Like when you do a personal, very selfish investigation that I thought came across as very specific to me, how universal those themes can then develop.
I make no apologies for the fact that I am seeking something out of this, but I never question at first, what am I giving to anybody else? I guess I just hope that they could relate and that would be enough, or it's beyond my understanding, like it would be something transcendental, but at this point, I'm looking for more clarity.
In my practice, I'm really interested in working with objects, but it's not so much about the thingification of objects. What I like to do is animate it. As a performance artist, I tend to work with creating scores, and the scores become a list of actions. So often I'm using the object to create encounters or moments of engagement with the audience. So the object on its own, it's not enough to have the object by itself. The object also needs us as the people.
I always aim for the audience to be plugged into that and be pulled into that, and whatever that is I'm talking about in ambiguous terms, I like for the audience to reach to that point on their own, not necessarily giving them a didactic thing saying this is about that and you need to know about this, but rather here's this powerful sound, or here's this, striking image, and why should you care about it?
Doing performance, it gave me a kind of bravery or courage to go into uncomfortable spaces. So mass makes me uncomfortable. Bikini mass, Monday, Tuesday, that kind of thing. All the people, the nudity, the loud noises, the traffic, the claustrophobia, all those things. I'm not cool with it. So one time I devised a long shroud. I wired a camera to be stuck to my chest, and I covered my head in a box. It's somewhat like a mask. So yes, I was masked, I was in a costume, and I was out there, but there was this intensity, being protected by the costume, being protected by the notion of I am performing, I am wearing this armor.
Because I remember taking photographs of myself in a bikini. This is at the same Alice Yard. It was supposed to be me broken in the carnival costume, which is an over-sexualized masquerade about women's breasts and other things. It's supposed to be cultural, but that's what it comes down to in the media. I was wearing the carnival costume, and I was in a kind of cage-like structure. And I was trying to create this image in a still photograph where the woman is trapped by this notion of the carnivalesque body, the sexualized body. And I had a male photographer at first. He had the same instructions as Michelle Isaba, who is my female photographer, and the two sets of photographs were completely different. It's like the man couldn't see my face. He couldn't see my personality. There was nothing sexual about the same level of nudity in Michelle's capturing of my body. It was very interesting. So I don't think that it has anything to do with the way a person dresses, because a man can find an adolescent girl completely alluring, and she could be unprovocative to a healthy man. You know what I mean? It's all about the individual.
But the thing is, having a camera strapped to me, I'm there on a mission to suck in all this visual data that otherwise would cause me harm. So because I'm like part machine and I'm completely covered, there was a level of safety. I'm not vulnerable, Michelle, but I am an entity, just taking in, but I'm not gonna feel or respond or react to what I'm taking in. I think that's something about performance. There's something about performance that makes you not who you are on a regular basis. People always question me about that, like, I see your work and you seem so brave for doing what you do, but why do you have such and such problem? Like, what are you saying? Like, they don't get it, but it is completely true. Like, that situation, like, I'm walking around with this box and people were, like, hitting the box on my head. Yeah. People were making comments, but in no way did I feel it. When I say feel it like a regular person. It didn't come into my skin. It did not make me feel vulnerable. It did not make me feel violated. So there's a kind of protection in doing this. There's a kind of self-defense in doing this.
The performer, in this sense, in masquerade, can take on this persona that enables a certain sense of power or a voice. You can become something else, someone else, and you're often kind of protected by this situation where the viewers understand that this is play in some way and you are not you. On the other hand, masquerade also provides an opportunity, I think, to play yourself, to provide maybe an outlet for behavior or practices that you may not ordinarily be allowed or feel comfortable in acting. So it can be empowering in those senses.
When I think about making work, it still very much comes from my feeling as being a Caribbean woman. And that can be a Caribbean woman living in Barbados or when I'm overseas, but it's very much informed by that, trying to make some kind of commentary on myself and how I fit into these different worlds, because I grew up in Barbados, but I've been living in the UK for a number of years, and now I'm in Cape Town. And something which always comes up when I'm home is in Barbados is the feeling of the struggle between male and female identity, and how within the landscape there seems to always be this tension. So walking on the streets in Barbados, women are always sussed at, women are always called at, and it becomes quite a hostile place. And so I find myself, because of that, even if it's not intended aggression, I find myself almost confused by that, almost overemphasized masculinity, where there's this freedom to comment on women every day, on what they're wearing, on their appearance, everything. And I struggle a lot with that.
I have performed characters that are female, but I've never necessarily looked at them as completely separate from myself. So it's always kind of imperative that it is me playing this female. So it's never an attempt to recreate a female in that direct way at all. My presence is always there, and that becomes really important, especially particularly in the work where I've been investigating this character called Mother Sally, this Barbadian character, where it is a man donning women's garb and usually stuffing breasts and behind. It was traditionally played by men, not so much anymore. The character is played by women. So in that character's instance, I don't see it as an attempt for the male to play a woman per se. It's more like this male attempting to don disguise that separates, I guess, the viewer from their persona. If they were not necessarily aware of the tradition, the piece starts to speak about other things, which are, I guess, questions of gender and sexuality. Those start to come immediately to the viewer.
At the moment, and since 2 years, pretty much, since I returned to live in Jamaica from Europe, I've been exploring the body and, my particular body, because I've been using myself, but the body in space, and particularly in the Caribbean and Jamaican space as a white female.
I'm really interested in this idea that Van Deloria says about how in Native communities that culture is a way of being. And so when I'm creating work and making objects or doing a performance, I'm really trying to think about being present and being there and doing things and being active. And I find that's how I really feel like I'm empowered, that I can do things, that I can create change and feel less helpless amongst all the other things that happen around us.
Then at the end, I ended up having to hold all of them. So I had this huge bundle of bananas, which in no way can I actually really contain. And it's about that slippage, and it's about the collapse of me trying to present this veneer of masculinity at different times during the performance, that it has to kind of fail in some way. So it's almost like the mask is sliding, because I'm trying to hold these things, I'm trying to contain this image, but it's impossible. And you see, that to me in a way really mirrors what gender is. Gender becomes the static thing where we're trying so hard to hold on to this guise of femininity, this guise of masculinity, but yet the mask has to fall at some point.
The fact that I'm actually functional versus my appearance surprises a lot of people. So I think that's kind of a performance in itself, because I dressed the whole Cinderella part with the frills and the earrings, but then I would be in like a woodwork room carving, or I'd be doing very hardcore, very masculine types of behavior, and very self-sufficient and very, women that perform their bodies in a similar way that I do aren't expected to be very functional. People are often surprised that I can sew, that I can cook, that I've been to school this long, all of these things. When I begin to speak, so I feel like every day I'm performing. So I almost sometimes deliberately, I dress in the most obscenely girly, pretty-headed, air-headed ways, just to show that these things, or this layering, this performance, because dress is all about performance to me, it's not really an adequate standard for judging an entire person. It's ridiculous, really.
I try not to make it a propaganda while I'm making my work, but there are those underlined, beliefs that I strongly stand by. For example, I'm working on a mural project that's going to be realized in Jersey City as a support to the Occupy Gezi, and we're going to be painting murals, these images. And I think that's much of a strong way of sharing your ideas and supporting them, as opposed to making it all about identity politics in your work.
I feel that there hasn't been that much questioning of whiteness in contemporary Caribbean culture recently. Even though a lot of other people have been asking themselves questions, those who are both white and mixed and even non-white, asking questions about whiteness today. So the history here is very, very loaded, and of course, I don't know, I hope that my work can contribute to a certain amount of understanding, that whiteness is also something that needs to be questioned enormously, and not just whiteness as a skin pigmentation, but as a state of mind, and what is it that it represents to other people to be white today in somewhere like Jamaica.